Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe. Show your support. We really appreciate it.
Hello and welcome back to Upgraded, where today we are welcoming a very special guest. This is someone who my uncle, Doug Bates, the Pulitzer Prize winning author and journalist, was kind enough to introduce. Please join me in welcoming acclaimed best-selling author, film critic for the Oregonian for many years, and also for KGW, NBC's affiliate in Portland, Oregon, the one, the only, Shawn Levy.
Howdy.
Hello. So you know my Uncle Doug.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so happy about this. And I'm so glad he's introduced us because he knows how much I love film and Hollywood and all these things. And it's so nice to make this connection. And then also you knew my Uncle Tom.
I did. Tom and Doug were both in the newsroom when I arrived, which was 1992. And I was just starting my career as an author as well. And Tom and I shared a book agent, Richard Pine at Inkwell Management in New York City. And Richard told me, you've got to read this book, Rads. Tom spoke about the anti-Vietnam War protesters who blew up the science building at the University of Wisconsin. And it's just a fantastic book. And, you know, you just kind of, when someone does work that you admire, you kind of look at them in a special light. So I always knew that about Tom, who we lost tragically young. But Doug was a steady presence in the 2 decades I was at the Oregonian. He was just sort of like really calm and sort of saw the big picture. And in a newsroom, things can get frantic and overheated and melodramatic. And he was never that way. Just, he would chuckle and say, yeah, that's a way to look at it, but think it as well, you know, and just gave people perspective. And we didn't work directly. We were in separate sections of the paper, but his vibe whenever we were at meetings together or bump into each other at events or even in the elevator was always very, you know, chill and reassuring. Felt like he was my uncle, even though we were colleagues. That. Yeah.
He has that presence. He has that energy. He's a calm in the storm for sure. There's no panic. That's a gift. Steady hands. I'm so grateful to have had both he and Tom as these incredible guides in my life, and they've helped me so much, like immeasurably. So, I'm so happy you've known both of them, and look, he introduced us. So, thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug.
Isn't he still editing a newspaper, a community newspaper? Like he's in retirement technically, but he believes in journalism as people do. It's a calling, and both of them answered that call. And Doug is doing it well past the age when other people have put the pen down.
He is just one continual inspiration to all of us and our entire family and beyond. So just wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, because it's so nice meeting people who know and appreciate loved ones in your life. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Okay. Before we get on with all of your incredible work, will you please join me in one of my favorite things? So, in putting your if you have some sunglasses nearby, join me in this little adventure.
I have very good sunglasses. These are my Hollywood producer sunglasses.
Are you starring on The Studio next? Because you look like you're going to be right there with Seth Rogen. Oh, that is fantastic.
These were gifted to me at Burning Man, and I've been to Burning Man seven times, and these have been with me 6 of them. And I only
get out, Shawn! Look at you.
They're only for special occasions.
That is freaking cool. Okay, so if you could go on a vacation, a holiday, anywhere right now, where would you go and why?
There's a town I visited as a kid with a Eurail pass in the early 1980s, Agrigento, Sicily. It's on the southern shore of Sicily. And it's, you know, a beautiful, you know, stone medieval little town. And it's got a beach on the Mediterranean. The next thing you see is Africa going south. And it has a hill with 7 Greek temples on it. It's a UNESCO site. And it's got some of the best preserved temples in the world. So you've got this gorgeous beach where I camped in a tent for 3 days in the winter of 1982/3. It's got this lovely Sicilian village where you can get the best meal of your life every day. And then you can go wandering through these Greek temples. So that to me is like a sweet spot. It's a tropical almost vacation with history and great food.
Extraordinary. I put it on my list. Top of the list. Okay.
That is so cool. And I will say, I have not been to Italy yet. I always say yet because I have this ongoing list. I mean, you have to leave the hope there, right? That you're going to be going at some point. But I have spent a lot of time in Greece. So that's a passion of mine from an old film. I have a film I made called Santorini Blue. And I know you're a film critic. And I know if you watch this, you might be really harsh because we had a lot of bad reviews, but I'm still exceptionally proud of my first and only so far feature film that I personally produced and act in. And we were award winning in the film festival circuit, but it's a really hard thing to make a movie and nobody sets out to make a bad movie.
No, unless they're trying to launder money. But yeah, getting the work into the world is the prize. I have this experience and I have this conversation with authors all the time. You control 100% of creation when you're an author, less than 100% when you're a filmmaker, because it's such a technical and collaborative endeavor. But when you release it, you lose all control. You go from 100 to 0. And if you're counting on what's going to happen when you have 0 control, you're in for a world of heartache.
Right.
And that's just the way it is. I've published 12 books and some have been fortunate and some have not been fortunate.
What's been your most successful book so far?
Well, the two that have sold the most copies over a long period of time are 1998, I wrote a book called Rat Pack Confidential, which a huge hit here and in the UK. And in 2009, a book on Paul Newman, A Life, which was a national bestseller, New York Times bestseller here twice. It was the craziest thing. It sold a bunch. And then a few years later, they lowered the price of the ebook to like $1.99, and it made the bestseller list again.
Oh my gosh.
The New York Times, it said reissue of 2009 book, just to make it clear that this was not a new thing. So those two, although technically 3 or 4 others have done really well, but those are the ones that, I get royalty checks on. And sometimes they're enough for, coffee and a croissant. And sometimes it's, pay a bunch of bills and maybe go buy a toy.
Well, either way, it's nice to get your words out there. That's how I feel about with my film and even the short films I've made, everything, all the different projects I've worked on in my career so far. I just feel so grateful to show the work and then to get paid for it is the next level, right? Like to get rewarded for your efforts and ways so you can support yourself and continue your adventures and creating, writing, storytelling, and what have you, right?
Exactly. And to have people in the profession say, oh, that person did these things. Let's give them another opportunity and another opportunity. And my favorite book that I've written, I feel is always the next one, because it's the one that I'm passionate about and the one that I've still got 100% control of it.
Yes. Okay. Just come out with Clint on Clint Eastwood. Tell us how this book came about.
Well, I've been fascinated by Clint Eastwood for a very long time. I grew up when he was a huge star. I'm born in 1961, so I'm about 10 when Dirty Harry comes out. So most of my career as sort of a young film buff and then, a young adult and then a professional, Clint Eastwood has been a major presence either as an actor or as a director. And I always knew there was a good story there. And in 2009, after I published the Paul Newman book, I wanted to do Clint Eastwood right away because you had progressive, conservative, 2 guys who lived away from Hollywood, Newman in Connecticut, Clint in Carmel. 2 guys who just seemed to like they were at the top of the game, but they also did not seem to be part of the game. And also I admired their work. They made bad movies, but they made lots of good ones.
Okay, speaking of movies, what's your favorite Paul Newman movie and what's your favorite Clint Eastwood movie, if you have one?
Newman, what jumps into my head immediately is Slapshot,
Okay.
where he's about 50 years old and he's literally playing hockey. He did all his own stunt work as an aging hockey player, and he's just having the time of his life.
Okay.
His best dramatic film, I would say, is The Verdict, which is just a
Okay.
couple of years later. And
Yes, yes.
for Clint, Unforgiven is a category unto itself. It's one of the great Hollywood movies. In my mind, it's the greatest Western because it kind of takes all that's in Westerns and addresses it. But the one that sort of, for me, is the most fun Clint Eastwood movie, it's a deep cut. It's called White Hunter, Black Heart. And he's directing himself, and he's playing basically John Huston, the director, making The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn.
Okay.
Instead of making the movie, he's trying to hunt an elephant. And it's very harsh in some ways and damning in some ways, but it's also very funny. And it's Clint Eastwood playing a role that we don't think of. He's not a man of action. He's not a vigilante. He's a filmmaker, so he gets to say things about the movies in character that could very well be things he said around, meeting tables in Hollywood.
Oh, I would like to. I'm gonna watch that old movie. I will tell you. I read this book. I read the whole book. Okay, so I was blown away because I really didn't know Clint Eastwood. I mean, I know Clint Eastwood, of course, as this incredible, award-winning director and actor, but I didn't know his whole story at all. I didn't know. And there was a lot of shocking things in this book. And his choices of film and that he's made and acted in are very serious. The dark, kind of the underbelly of humanity in a sense. They're rough and dark.
Yeah. In some of his greatest films, Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, Mystic River. Mystic River is.
I have seen all of those.
I've watched each of them multiple times, and they're great movies. But Mystic River is like one of these movies that I've seen everything as a film critic. I mean, everything that can be filmed, more or less, I've witnessed, and the emotional rawness of that film in particular. Also, $1 Million Baby. There's the plot twist, which I'm very, normally I think spoiler warnings are a little precious, particularly in a biography. You're talking about a 30-year-old movie. But in this case, it's so dramatic. And recently, as part of the promotion, I showed it here in Portland and talked about it afterward. And when that plot twist occurs, you could feel the room sort of, and it breaks your heart. And to read that script and say, I'm going to do this, is a level of commitment to hard reality that a lot of Hollywood filmmakers can't stomach. They would rather do something palatable than something hard.
To what you're saying, I find myself when I'm working on projects, you live with this project. Okay, you perform it. If you're an actor, you work on the role and you perform the role. But as a filmmaker as well, which he is a filmmaker in so many of these really heavy subjects, to be able to live with that story, because you live with it for years. You're filming it, you're editing it, or you're writing it, you're filming. I'm trying to think. He doesn't write.
But he's involved from the beginning.
Right, the development and everything.
Has to release it and promote it, and if it's Oscar worthy, he's then on that circuit with it. So it can be like 3-5 years often.
Totally, and so that's a whole other level of strength to be able to live with these stories and these subjects. On this topic of things that I was surprised about, I didn't know he was this accomplished jazz musician.
Yeah, he was like a loner as a boy. His family moved around a lot during the Depression, and he was always the new kid at school, and he was picked on. He was quiet. He was tall. An easy target for bullies. And one of the things that gave him comfort at home, his mom taught him how to play the piano, and he particularly liked boogie woogie jazz piano. And he's been playing that for nearly 90 years. He learned it when he was a boy, and he's 95 now. He still has the piano that he learned to play on.
Oh my gosh.
And he has included jazz music and jazz scores in many of his films. He's been a big supporter of the Monterey Jazz Festival. He has performed on stage a little bit of boogie woogie, a very little bit, at Carnegie Hall with a
Wow.
jazzmen who were like, you know, if there was a Jazz Hall of Fame, all these guys would be in it or would be first ballot shoo-ins when their day comes.
Oh my gosh.
And he's very serious about it. He made the film Bird about Charlie Parker, featuring a then unknown Forrest Whitaker as Parker. People who know jazz know that Clint Eastwood is the real deal and probably the biggest promoter of jazz among Hollywood creators.
Now, on his personal life, I know there's a lot of his career and there's so much to talk about. And the book is so in depth. I mean, it was so fun to be introduced to this icon of film, really, who has been working for 7 decades.
70 years, 71 years since his first film. Yeah.
Amazing. One other thing, and this is on his personal life, I was surprised by, was that he has 8 children with 6 different women.
Yes. And he was only married to 2 of them. You know, I say in the introduction quite plainly that I'm glad I wasn't a woman in his life. You know, he's a dazzling man. He's got the privilege of wealth, and he's very handsome and tall, and you know, keeps fit to this day. So he's attractive.
Big health nut.
Yeah,
big health nut. I read. Yeah.
But he's an inconstant partner. Confessed, even while he was married to his first wife, to being with other women. He had children with other women while he was married, or while he was with a long-term partner. So, you know, to be a woman in his life was to at some point you were going to be left behind or hurt.
Yeah.
But I think he's a good dad. He takes the paterfamilias very seriously. He takes care of his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. They're mostly all around him. And even his first wife, Maggie, who he was with from about 54 to 82 or so, even though they were estranged for the last 6 or 8 years of that, she was around him as well for most of their lives. So, you know, better as a dad than as a husband or partner. And in a couple of cases, a really bad partner. But that when you dig into any life, you find these things. Paul Newman, famously married to Joanne Woodward for 50 years. But when he met Joanne, he was a married man with 3 children. Joanne was an affair, you know, and the bottom line is I choose to write about these people not because they had sex, but because they made art. The book is called Clint, the Man in the Movies, and the movies get equal billing because I think that's who he is in his core. He's a filmmaker, an artist. And if all he was a guy with a lot of kids and a lot of broken-hearted women in his past, I wouldn't think about writing about him.
Totally. I appreciate learning about the man and the movies because there was so much to learn on both levels. Actually, when I first started reading, real quickly about the children, are any of them in showbiz now? Almost
all of them. Scott Eastwood, Scott's plays leading roles in many films. His daughter Allison, his oldest daughter, to whose mother he was married, has acted in many films, including of his, and directed 2 or 3 films. His daughter with Francis Fisher, Francesca, has acted. His second oldest daughter, Kimber, worked for many years as a hair and makeup person for TV game shows. So of the 8, I think 5 have like proper resumes in showbiz.
Nice.
His son Kyle is a jazz musician,
Yes.
has a stack of albums and tours all the time, and so he too is in showbiz.
Very cool. So he's really been a leader to his family in that way for them to continue in the arts and follow and, be inspired by him, perhaps.
And he makes his kids audition if they work in his films. They're nepo babies, but they're not given things on a silver platter.
Listen, I like the way, Clint, the way you wrote about how he directs as well, which was very fascinating to me as a performer, as an actor, how he really loves to record even the rehearsals and sometimes uses that as the take and then moves on really quickly. And it makes some people very upset, but other people appreciate that it's not overly rehearsed, overly performed. Like it's more natural that way.
He's that way about scripts as well. He reads a script and then he doesn't think, let's develop the hell out of this. He's like, I like that script. Let's shoot the thing I like. And on set, he really believes in the immediacy of the emotion that people bring. And people have to get used to it because many actors think, well, by the 8th or 10th or 15th take, I'm really going to be in this. But there's a wonderful quote from Tim Robbins, who won an Oscar in the only film he made with Clint, Mystic River. And he said, I had a lot of deeply emotional stuff to do in this movie. And the great thing about Clint's process is that I could give my all on each take because I knew there were only going to be 2 or 3 max. And if it was another director and I'd have to do 12 or 15, I'd have to keep something in reserve so I didn't kill myself.
Oh, interesting.
And that's we don't think of Clint as like a craftsman of acting, although I think he's an excellent actor, but he's onto something. The greatest actor of our time, Meryl Streep, was toe-to-toe with him in The Bridges of Madison County.
Oh, I know. They were so good together in that.
Yeah.
That is an outlier of his type of films, really. But it's kind of an offshoot of him being this lone soldier wanderer, but a love story in that regard.
And she said, there was great respect for the emotional moment in saying, we're only going to do this once or twice. It's like, go for it. But also she said to him after she saw the movie, you kept all my mistakes in. And he said, yes, but they were human mistakes. And that's a philosophy of acting that feels more like theater than cinema.
I agree. That's what I got from reading that. So in all his years, like on Rawhide, all his years practicing as an actor, I feel like that's part of the reason he directs like that, because he knows what it's like to be the actor and have to give that performance. And I feel like that's part of the reason he has evolved and has that style. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And the little quirk where this started well into his acting career, but starting in the 70s or 80s, he had his crew walk around with headpieces and microphones so they could talk quietly to one another rather than screaming and yelling. And he does not shout action at the start of a take. He just says, okay. Clint noticed when he was making the TV series Rawhide that these directors would shout action and the horses would stiffen and everyone would get tense. And he'd say, why don't you just start the camera? We're already ready. That was the whole point. And then if you don't say action, if you just say, okay, or let's go in a quiet voice, everyone's listening, everyone's ready, and they can do their job instead of like getting a jolt of adrenaline before a scene that might be something intimate or quiet. And then his famous sign off is another okay, or he'll sometimes say, that's enough of that.
That's enough of that. That just goes with his personality too, because he's not this crazy screaming guy. He's very calm in his performances. I think he directs a lot of the way that he likes to perform. Even it's not over the top. It's a certain way.
Oh yeah, it's his personality. He, again, he's a loner. He grew up a loner. His sports are golf, tennis, and skiing, which are solo, not team sports.
Right.
And that's the characters that we think of most. The man with no name and Dirty Harry. Those guys are loners. And if you're a loner, you're keeping your thoughts to yourself. He had an acting teacher when he was at Universal Talent School in the 50s, the last heyday of studio acting schools. He was one of the last people through the door. And the guy's philosophy of acting was, don't just do something, stand there. And recognizing that in stillness, you can convey something about your inner life or your reactions or your longing, rather than putting on a dumb show for the people in, the 300 level of an auditorium. And, that goes to, if you look at his camera style, if you look at the music in his movies, his method on the set, all of it comes from that one person alone, keeping to themselves. That's the starting point. And that most of his work, the best of his work, harmonizes with that sensibility.
Have you seen all of Clint's movies?
I've seen all of the movies. I must confess that some of the films he made in the 50s before Rawhide, Lady Godiva of Coventry and Tarantula and films of that nature, Revenge of the Creature, I only watched his scenes.
Okay.
If he's on camera for 60 seconds in the whole movie, I didn't feel like I needed to watch the whole movie to render a judgment or an impression of those 60 seconds. I didn't watch every episode of Rawhide. And it's interesting. He's got a 70-year acting career, 217 hour-long episodes of Rawhide. And he's not in every minute of every episode, but those 217 hours of television are longer than all of his movies combined, as director or as actor. So, he had almost two complete careers, one as a TV actor and one as a film actor. But I did watch every feature film he made, from the spaghetti westerns, 1964 is the first one, to the present day.
Do you remember the first Clint Eastwood movie you ever saw?
The first one that I'm sure that I saw was the Eiger Sanction in about 1974 or 5. It was based on a best-selling novel about a spy. He's an assassin and he has to kill someone on a mountain climbing expedition in Switzerland, but he's not sure who the bad guy is. And it's not a very good movie.
I feel like a lot of his movies, everyone's kind of a bad guy. There's a lot of showing that everyone's flawed.
Yes.
Everyone's flawed. There's a lot of that theme throughout a lot of his movies, right? Making mistakes and then paying for the mistakes.
Boy, you absolutely spot on. Sometimes everyone's a bad guy, like in the spaghetti westerns and the Dirty Harry movies. Harry's a cop, but he's a cop you hope doesn't answer the call when you call 911, because and he's also, you look at those characters, the Man with No Name and Harry Callahan, they're broken men. You would not want to be those guys. You would not want to be their neighbor. You would not want to be their partner, whether professional or personal. And they are in worlds filled with bad guys.
Yeah.
And then later, as his films become sort of more human scale, things like $1 Million Baby, Mystic River, The Mule, even last year, Juror Number 2.
I saw that too, right? Yeah.
Courtroom Drama.
That was good. Yeah,
Yes, terrific little film.
It was good.
Directed by a 94-year-old.
Right.
Those movies are about human flaws. They're not about life and death, Law and Order. They're just about the little things that we all have, the choices we've made that took us the wrong way, took us off the good path, took us on a path that maybe estranged us from the people who we should have been taking care of or we should have been loving. And, it's an ongoing theme with him.
Yes, definitely.
It's a truism that he made his name committing acts of violence on screen. And then he spent a larger part of his career making movies about the awful cost that violence asks of the people who commit it. So to go from The Man with No Name, killing 3 or 4 guys and telling the undertaker, my mistake, 4 coffins, to Unforgiven, where his character has sworn to put down the gun and now is only doing it out of, dire necessity, and then, has the famous speech, "It's a hell of a thing to kill a man." You know, that's a trajectory of morality as well as of cinema.
Was there anything in particular you learned from writing this book about Clint that shocked you or that you were surprised by?
I mean, there's little things that aren't so little, like, he's a gun control person. Dirty Harry Callahan supported the Brady Bill for handgun control. He has been a handgun owner. I don't believe he currently has a concealed carry permit. He has weapons on his ranches, scatter guns, wildlife, keeping bears and such at bay, that sort of thing. But he's not a violent man, even though he's played violent men so convincingly. He's more politically moderate, even progressive than I knew going in. On issues of women's rights and equal pay for women, on equal rights for gays, on tolerance toward cannabis use, on land conservation and animal advocacy. He's the people who know his politics, like on the ground around him, would say at the most accurate name for him would be libertarian with a capital L. And that leads you into a lot of, hey, you do your thing, and as long as you're not doing it on my side of the fence, I'm good,
Okay, so everyone has to read this book. And now I want to talk about The Castle on Sunset. Oh my gosh. Okay, Chateau Marmont. I'm going to tell you right now, I am a Chateau Marmont girl. I have never stayed there, but I do love Chateau Marmont. I have been there, like you, for meetings. How did this book come about?
Well, Chateau Marmont is a very old hotel. It's basically on the eastern edge of the Sunset Strip. So it's on Sunset Boulevard, right before you get to the windy part that takes you to Beverly Hills. And I always wanted to write a book about the Sunset Strip. I've done biographies, and I've done books that I call scene books. And I've done 3.5 scene books. And they are books about cultural moments when sort of everything in a certain place comes to a high level. So I've done Rome in the 50s, which is the birth of the paparazzi, Italian and American cinema, a kind of gossip culture, the height of Italian fashion. I've done the Rat Pack era in Las Vegas, and I've done swinging London of the 60s. So the Beatles and mini skirts and young British actors like Michael Caine and Terence Stamp, Vidal Sassoon, Hair, all these things. And I thought there was a scene book in the Sunset Strip, and I could not get anyone to commission that book. I kept proposing it, and people like, yeah, it's a cool idea, but nah. And then somebody in a completely different context said, what about a history of Chateau Marmont? And two things immediately happened in my brain. One was I knew exactly what that book would look like, because it's basically a biography of a building, but it's also a biography of the Sunset Strip. So I write about the different eras of Hollywood and this one road in particular where, from the silent movie era to today, if you take the pulse of the Sunset Strip, you have an idea of Hollywood and of the larger popular culture. So that was the origin of it. I like I say, I instantly knew what this book would be. And so it was a very lucky suggestion.
I just enjoyed every chapter of this book. When you traveled somewhere and you've enjoyed it, and then also it being such a private hotel, an oasis for people in Hollywood on all sides of the camera who could go there, sadly, in between relationships or in between projects or during filming projects, coming in from New York, people from New York who felt like it was kind of a home away from home because of the way it was originally built as apartments, right? So each one has its own kitchen.
Yeah, it was always a private place. As you mentioned, it was built as apartments right before the Depression. So somebody got the idea, well, I'm going to buy this building and turn it into a hotel. And because it was not built as a hotel, it did not have a reception area. It did not have a restaurant or a bar. It didn't have a swimming pool until after World War II. And If you pulled in, you had your parking space in the garage, you got in the elevator, and you went upstairs to your room where you were completely self-enclosed, as you would be in an apartment building. As a result of that, when it became a hotel, people are like, oh, there are no autograph hounds or paparazzi looking for me. I can come and go in secrecy because I don't have to walk through the lobby. I can park and go right upstairs to my room. And very famously in the 1930s, the studio boss Harry Cohn told young actors, if you want to be seen, go to the Beverly Hills Hotel. If you don't want to be seen, go to Chateau Marmont.
Mm.
And
Yes.
that's changed, but it's still more or less true. There is a restaurant and a reception area and a bar now, but it still has the privacy more like a private residence than a hotel.
Totally. When I've been there, I've had some, meetings like the little around the pool area and that little garden. That's where I've mostly sat. But because there isn't a lot of room to sit otherwise, it's kind of it's a small space.
Yeah. It's only got about 60 rooms. And there are hotels, the Roosevelt Hotel, the Beverly Wilshire, they have 60 rooms on a single floor.
Yes.
So it's a boutique hotel, like tiny, and still maintains the privacy. And it's had this genius remodel. The current owner, who's the longest tenured owner in its history, he rebuilt the hotel in the 90s to make it look like glamorous golden age of Hollywood.
Is this the same owner as a Standard?
He is one of the founders of the Standard. He's no longer
Yes.
attached to the Standard Hotel.
Right. Okay.
Andre Balazs is his name. And he had this idea, I'm going to dress this place up to make it look like, oh, this is like when Clark Gable stayed here, or, Katharine Hepburn. But when they stayed there, it was kind of a dump. It was unknown. It was out of the way. It had been put together in ramshackle fashion because it was an apartment house. It was unfurnished. So when the guy who bought it made it into a hotel, he furnished it with odds and ends that he picked up at estate sales during the Great Depression. So no two rooms had the same furniture. The furniture was kind of threadbare. John Belushi famously died there of a drug overdose in 1982. And that's when the hotel became famous. Prior to that, it was kind of unknown.
Didn't you say that even in the news, even in the print, when the article came out about John passing away, didn't it just give the address? It didn't even say the name of the hotel?
I think by that point they named the hotel, but they would say it would be with a description. So it would say John Belushi died at Chateau Marmont, a hotel on the Sunset Strip that caters to show people. Because even people in Los Angeles didn't know what the building was. The sign is not on the hotel. The sign is down on the strip, and the hotel is actually a couple of 100 feet above the entrance. Is not on Sunset Boulevard. It's on Marmont Lane.
Right.
And, it has this air of being in the middle and yet being off to the side, which is what recommended it to people who would come to Hollywood, say, to make a movie. You mentioned New York actors, and they could say, well, I went to Hollywood, but I stayed at Chateau Marmont. Oh, okay. So you didn't go Hollywood. You just went to Hollywood. That was so, you could maintain your artistic virginity from being around movie people.
Right.
Nicholas
What was
Ray,
that? Go ahead.
the director of Rebel Without a Cause, lived in one of the bungalows for 8 years. Today, those bungalows rent for about $4,000 a night.
Oh my.
This guy who was he wasn't Cecil B. DeMille. He wasn't like the most highly paid director in Hollywood. He was a working director, but the place was so inexpensive he could live there for 8 years. Across Sunset Boulevard was the Garden of Allah, which everything that people think about Chateau Marmont, Garden of Allah was that first. It was this wild parties and all these debauched celebrities getting bungalows that were around a pool that was in the shape of the Black Sea, because the Garden of Allah was named for an actress, Alla Nazimova. And she owned the property. One of the reasons Chateau Marmont was built where it was, when it was built, Sunset Boulevard was unpaved in that section.
Wow.
Because it was not Los Angeles and it was not Beverly Hills. It was West Hollywood, which wasn't yet a city.
Mm.
Until it became a city, the road was still sort of a dirt road. And Allah had built her mansion on that site because it was just over the county line, so she didn't have to pay county taxes. And
Wow.
somebody drew the line wrong. So half her house was in LA City and half was in the county.
Oh
And
my gosh.
when the tax assessors came, she moved all her valuables into the county part of the house so that
That's hysterical.
the city part of the house would not be taxed at so high a rate.
That is a good story. Do you know what year that was built?
It's during the silent film era as well, probably around 1920, and it was torn down in the late 50s. There's currently a bank, like a 60s architecture, like a Googie style, that sort of style of like LA diners. It's a very specific LA sort of space age look. And if you go into that bank lobby, there is a diorama of the original Garden of Allah Hotel.
Okay, cool. Was there something in particular that was the most surprising thing you learned writing this book? I mean, there's so many good stories in it.
Yeah, it was just interesting to me, like the theory that popped into my head on the day that the idea was suggested to me was that
Yeah.
you could tell the history of Hollywood
Yeah.
by charting the history of this building.
The hotel is such a Hollywood character. Okay, it's like just another star of Hollywood, and even the signs, or you were saying the Chateau Marmont sign's not right next to the hotel, so that's even kind of secretive. But also the history of those other big signs. I loved your whole section on the story of these big signs that stood outside the hotel, and when people would look out the window and see the glaring signs or the different kinds of billboards they'd see, and that whole history as well. There's just so many elements of the time and of passing and of the history of that whole section of the Sunset Strip.
Yeah, in the 50s, there was a giant showgirl, a statue, twirling, scantily clad young woman advertising the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas. And that was ironic because the Sunset Strip had been where all the Hollywood celebrities would go out to party, all the great nightclubs, the Mocambo and Ciro's and the Tropicana. And all of those night spots started to die in the 50s because Palm Springs and Las Vegas became accessible. And that's where the entertainers would perform. They'd get more money for 2 nights in Vegas than for 3 weeks on the Sunset Strip. And here's this glaring, gigantic statue right in front of the hotel that then got replaced by the Marlboro Man billboards that were there for decades. And now we think of the Sunset Strip, it has billboards for movies and TV shows. In the 70s, it was record albums. Like you knew you were a big recording star when you went down the Sunset Strip and saw your billboards. So that's part of the allure of it. And the hotel, again, it's not of that culture, but it has a front row seat to that culture.
I love how you just said that, a front row seat to it. That's so true. And I feel like your book gave us a front row seat into a private world. And that's what I really enjoyed about it, because you really you got so much information that is so private for that hotel, and you were able to share it in such a nice way. One of the stories you shared about Desi and Lucy, that now, is this a true story? The suitcase story?
I mean, it's a story that's been told about them. You know, everyone.
Tell us this story.
So Desi, of course, was he was deeply unfaithful when he was married to Lucy. He was with every woman he could be with, and she would frequently throw him out of the house, and he would frequently go to Chateau Marmont. Basically, if you were a man staying at Chateau Marmont in those years, it was known that your marriage was about to end, because that's where you went when you got kicked out of the house. And Desi was there, and Lucy came by, and they were having some sort of spat on the balcony. And the hotel is built so there's a lot of sort of terraces. It's sort of like in a ziggurat shape, subtle. It's not like a pyramid shape, but it maximizes capacity for terraces. And they were on one of these terraces, and they were in a tooth and nail fight. And
Mhm.
there was attache case involved. And in the
Yeah.
fight, the thing sprung open and a bunch of cash came flying out and floated down onto Sunset Boulevard. This is the story. I did not speak to anyone who had witnessed it, but there was no way I was leaving it out because of that.
Right. I love Lucille Ball, her passion, who she is. I've always really been drawn to because as a woman in Hollywood and how she tried so hard for so long to get her show made and what they did. Their story is remarkable and how they finally got the Lucille Ball show and everything and how old she was at the time in her 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And like at that point in time, you were like done in Hollywood. And for her to have hit her fame, her great success of her career with her show in her 40s, I've always been drawn to and inspired by her story. So when I heard that little tidbit, I was drawn to it. Of course, I'm sad to hear that it was over this infidelity and whatnot, but the whole idea of a money shower coming down after a fight just kind of adds to the Chateau Marmont, I don't know, infamy.
Yeah, yeah. You can't say anything bad about the hotel that would, smear it. During the time I was writing the book, stories came out about the ownership, the owner's personal behavior. There was at the height of Me Too, there was a front page Sunday newspaper article in the New York Times about his behavior with women and with women who worked for him and
Oh, wow.
women in general. And then during COVID, he tried to turn the hotel into a private club, and a lot of stuff came out about hiring practices and promotion practices and
Oh
unfair
my gosh.
treatment of women and people of color on the staff.
Ooh.
And there was a time when the hotel was being boycotted by Hollywood at the request of the Hotel Workers Union. In fact, the Lucy and Ricky TV series with Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem did not film at Chateau Marmont because that was during this time. And they said they had permission to film there, and they said no, thank you, and they went somewhere else.
And
But
just to like this book came out in 2019. Your book came out in
right.
2019. Okay.
And that was all settled. And the unions got a much better contract, and employees who were let go during COVID got their jobs and seniority back. So
Okay.
he did a lot of repair work, but that was
Okay.
also when he had to separate from the Standard Hotel Group.
Oh,
So
okay.
he personally besmirched himself and paid the price, but the hotel, I think, is no longer on people's do not go list.
I didn't know any of that, but yeah, I haven't been back there for many years, but I did enjoy some, not gonna lie, some boozy afternoons there.
Yeah.
Fun. Just a little side note story. Richard Belzer, the actor Richard Belzer, my friend worked with him, and we were working all these collaborations, and I'd get hired on as like makeup artist or actor, like in different things, sketch comedy, still short films we were doing. We did a short series called Belzer Vision that were comedies. In that I played Richard Belzer's assistant, Denise, the assistant who he screams at all the time. It was actually super fun. But we'd go, and Richard and his wife Harley, love Harley, and rest in peace, Richard. He's no longer with us, but they would stay at the chateau. And at the same time, Richard and Jerry Lewis were spending a lot of time together, and they were working on a musical. It was like a group of guys, all these comedians. They were all working, and we'd go to Las Vegas and to LA and all this stuff, and the development of it. And long story short, that's where I met Jerry Lewis, and I actually spent quite a lot of time because our group with Jerry Lewis, even here in New York, we all had Easter brunch at Tavern on the Green, and I even went to his house in Las Vegas. And he was like sharp and funny. Did you ever meet Jerry? I know you wrote the book.
I did. Jerry was my first book, and I interviewed him twice at length. And the second time ended, we met on his yacht, which was moored in San Diego. And in the second interview, he lost his temper with me, as he was famous for doing, and screamed and yelled, red in the face, right in my face. I was never in the Marines. I never played football. I'd never had a grown man, come at me like this. And that broke off our collaboration. And I went on to write the book, and in the conclusion of the book, I wrote about the incident that I've just alluded to, and that became famous. Jerry Lewis basically screaming and yelling at me and throwing me off his yacht. And I was interviewing Tom Hanks for Saving Private Ryan.
Oh.
And at the time, Tom was talking with Martin Scorsese about making a film about Dean Martin. And Tom would play Dean, and it happened to be Tom's birthday the day I had this long interview with him. So I brought him my first two books as a gift, the Jerry Lewis bio and the Rat Pack book, Dean Martin, of course, in the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra. And I said, I understand it's your birthday, and I understand you might have some use of these things, and I've made them, so I wanted to give them to you. And he looks at the books, and he said, read it. And we get to talking, and he says he had been out to dinner with Martin Short, Paul Reiser, and another comedian who we all know whose name I can never remember. And Marty Short spent the entire dinner doing impressions of Jerry throwing me off the boat.
Oh my God.
And
thank you, Tom Hanks, for that. Wow, what a great story.
And Penn Teller told me that Jerry throwing me off the boat was the greatest thing he ever read in a book. And I was at Sundance in a lobby waiting to go in to see something, and Harry Shearer was there. And I interviewed Harry Shearer for that book, and I went over and introduced myself, and he says, oh, and he grabs the woman next to him. He says, honey, this is the guy Jerry Lewis threw off the boat. So my experience of Jerry it was pure Jerry. Yours was too. Jerry was the truly like the Janus face, like laugh and cry face. He was both things, a very complicated man.
Interesting stories.
Jerry and Richard Belzer loved one another. That was sincere.
They were like
Richard
best
had
friends.
a Jerry Lewis tattoo.
Oh, they were so close. Richard loved him like a father, like really loved him. It was a really beautiful time to see their friendship. It really was.
If I told you that they shared DNA, you wouldn't have been surprised. And I say that knowing that Jerry has children other than the ones mentioned in his will.
Oh, who knows? That's a whole other side. Who knows? I don't know. All I know is they had a beautiful friendship, and I'll leave it at that. For that.
That's true. And it's, like I say, he is both things.
Yeah.
The darkness of him is really thick, but there was a lot of light there as well, and his charity work and underrated as a filmmaker and comedian because he was such a particular flavor, but an important figure in the history of film comedy.
Agreed. I totally agreed. I'm going to have to read that book as well. The King of Comedy.
Life and Art of Jerry Lewis.
Life and Art of Jerry Lewis. Yes. Okay. There's another one of your great books. I have to get on that one. Now I want to talk about your storytelling podcast, Glitter and Might, about Lew Wasserman. This is a guy, and there's so much I don't know, and that's why your podcast is so cool. I cannot believe how much this guy helped form and change Hollywood.
Yeah, this guy was the most powerful man in Hollywood for longer than any studio boss. And I've been a student of this business for like nearly 50 years, since I was a boy, and reading everything I could read about show business in Hollywood. And I would come across the phrase, the legendary Lew Wasserman, the great Lew Wasserman, and really only knew, well, he was an agent who became a studio head. I had no idea of the amount of things that are with us till today that Lew Wasserman innovated, and how ruthless and how sharp and how visionary this man was. And someone asked me, would I be interested in doing this? And it was a time when I was kind of between things. It was right after the Chateau Marmont book came out. And in fact, I know exactly where I was. I was on the road to Burning Man when my agent and I agreed to do this with the podcast people.
Oh my gosh.
So I went to Burning Man and then turned off my phone for a week, knowing that when I got back to Earth, I would have this ahead of me. So August of 2019. And it wound up, COVID happened, and then everything changed, and the podcast didn't come out until about 2023, I believe, 2022 maybe. And in that time, This guy was the biggest individual donor to Democratic national politics, like his signature on a personal check to Democratic candidates from the 50s to the Clinton era. And he was Ronald Reagan's agent and best friend. And when Reagan left the White House and moved back to Bel Air, the first formal thing he did was have lunch with Lew Wasserman.
Wow.
So Bill Clinton on speed dial, and he was Reagan's bestie.
I mean, what a range that is. I literally laughed out loud because of my own perspective in my career when I read how he decided to get political influence. And so he stopped being an agent, and how Ronald Reagan was one of his first clients, and how when Lou and his wife, Edie, went to the White House and he went to shake his hand, and Ronald Reagan said to him, "If you were a better agent, I wouldn't need this job."
That's right. That was at his first inauguration. Yeah. I mean,
that made me laugh out loud because I thought getting an agent and having a good agent so hard and it's so important. And I don't know, it just made me laugh.
Yeah, Reagan was actually funny. I disagreed with him politically on almost everything, but he was actually, people who were around him, he was warm and witty. Just leave the politics outside the room. But the amazing thing about Wasserman was he had that same relation with LBJ, with Kennedy, with Clinton, with the Bushes. Lyndon Johnson offered him the job of Secretary of Commerce after he was reelected in 1964. And Wasserman said, honestly, that would be a step down for me. He was running the biggest corporation that showbiz had ever seen. MCA, Music Corporation of America, was the talent agency. It bought Universal Pictures. A talent agency bought a movie studio. He created the theme parks. He bought record companies. He bought publishing companies. He bought a Laserdisc manufacturing plant. It was one of the few mistakes he made when he was at his height. He put his money on the wrong technology. But this guy, he had one of the first TVs that anyone in California owned. And people like, this isn't going to replace movies. He said, you watch. And he bought Universal to make content for television. Like, it would also make movies, but by 1962 or 3, something 60% of primetime network television was being created by Universal or one of its subsidiaries, because Wasserman had a leap start on everyone else.
Leap start because he was so connected. And it seemed to me he really worked his angles with his connections to get approvals for things. Like Lou got Reagan doing a show.
He was the host of General Electric Theater.
Right. And that's kind of was the first reality show with he and Nancy, because they were kind of at home filming this. Is that true?
After World War II, Reagan couldn't get a job as an actor. His days as a leading man were short, and then they were next to nothing. And Lou got him a job on TV because Universal produced all this TV content. And back in those days, shows had individual sponsors. So it would be like the Ford Philco Western Hour and things like that. And General Electric Theater was an anthology series of dramas, and Reagan was the host, and he would do live commercials for GE appliances. And as part of that, GE built a house in the Hollywood Hills where Reagan and Nancy and their children lived. That was the home of the future. It was completely electric with all GE appliances, and they did long infomercials basically for General Electric in the house. So,
oh my gosh,
Reagan, the son, and Patty Davis, those kids were in that house growing up basically in front of TV cameras, because they would, as many years as GE Theater was on TV, they did these commercials. What I thought you were going to say, well, there's two things. One is part of the gig as being on GE Theater was that Reagan would make speeches around the country at General Electric factories. And GE, of course, was a big munitions manufacturer. And Reagan was sort of spouting the company line at this armaments company and home appliance company and, tech giant. And that's where he learned to speak as a politician, speaking to crowds
Oh,
at these factories. So that's one thing. But the other is that there were three Midwestern guys. There was Wasserman and Reagan, and Wasserman's other BFF was Sidney Korshak, who was the Chicago mob's lawyer in Vegas and Los Angeles. And Lew Wasserman and Universal and MCA never had a problem with labor unions because Sidney Korshak and the mob controlled the unions. So Wasserman could get the president of the United States on his phone, and he could get the head of the Chicago mob on his phone on the same afternoon. And
connected guy.
yeah.
To be friends with Lou, you really get things done.
And if that was going on today, and I say today, and today maybe not, but like 5 years ago when the norms of Western civilization still held in this country, that would be impossible. Once that conflict of interest was known, you would be out on your ear. It happened to John Kennedy when J. Edgar Hoover said to him, "You happen to have a mistress who is also the mistress of Sam Giancana, the Chicago crime lord." Kennedy, had to obviously the woman was out of his life, but he had to change a lot of the ways he comported himself. That didn't make the papers. Today it would be everywhere. And Wasserman maintained these relationships into the 80s. He was one of Steven Spielberg's sponsors. At the same time, he maintained this connection to gangsters.
This whole gangster thing is one thing, but then the story about Steven Spielberg and Jaws and how Lou was one of the first people who made the disaster film genre, who blew that up, who made that happen with Jaws.
I think something about producing TV for many years, when he finally started making movies, he was not successful. And then he started to think about them more as mass events. There weren't prestige events. In the 60s, even into the 80s, 90s, movies would open in New York and Los Angeles, big premieres, and they would roll out. And they would get to a town like Portland, where I live and covered movies, 2 months later. And Wasserman had the idea, well, television goes everywhere on the same day. Why don't we do that with movies? And he started it with Airport, which is the first blockbuster disaster movie in 1970-69. And then a few years later, he did it on a huge scale with Jaws. Yes. And Wasserman had the idea of saturating the nation's TV audience with commercials for the week that Jaws opened. It was the first time that had ever been done. People wanted to open it on like 900 screens, which was a huge number in 1975. And Wasserman said, no, let's cut it back to 600 because there are going to be lines for this movie. And I want people to be going to their movie theater saying, why aren't you showing Jaws? I want there to be awareness of the demand for tickets. He was a marketing genius, and he would come up with this stuff on the fly.
He was visionary with his business acumen and his way. He saw opportunities. So many things he did launched next level, were the first of its kind.
One last Wasserman thing.
Yes.
In 1969, he greenlit a movie by a director who had never made a film before. And he said, I'm only going to let you do this if you take the Guild minimum salary as a director and a star, because the guy wanted to direct a movie and star in it. And that director and star was Clint Eastwood. So Wasserman.
Oh my gosh.
And he was Jerry Lewis's agent too. And Paul Newman's, who I've written about. Dude was everywhere.
Everywhere. I mean,
and nowhere. Not 100 people outside of Hollywood could have told you his name when he was at the height of his power.
It's amazing. I would say several of your themes of your subjects are what I would call hidden in plain sight. They're like several of think about Chateau, Lew Wasserman, even Clint is like, he never wanted kind of that. I mean, he obviously as an actor and wants to be successful and things, but I feel like they're kind of private people, he was more private in certain regards. And I don't know, I'm just kind of putting this together, but it seems to me like there's an ongoing theme of your work.
I think that's true. Paul Newman fits that category. And in the scene books that I've written, all of them deal with fashion. And fashion is the
Mm.
ultimate hidden in plain sight. We all know how hair should look. We don't know that Vidal Sassoon practically invented every haircut that anyone on earth wears today. Like there's
Ooh.
hairdressing before Vidal Sassoon, there's hairdressing after.
Mm-hmm.
Women used to sit under the space capsule helmets and their hair would be baked into place. Vidal Sassoon was like, no, we're going to cut the hair into the shape we want, and we're just going to use these little hand blow dryers that I found in Asia. And if you have a blow dryer in your house, it is because Vidal Sassoon taught the world this is how to dress your hair.
I think that my hairdryer is a Vidal Sassoon hairdryer.
He sold his name to a lot of products.
I'm certain of it. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
But like that's hidden in plain sight as well, because we all know it, and yet we don't know where it came from.
Okay, so all this has been so fantastic, and I just feel like I could just keep picking your brain on all these fabulous stories, but what a gift to have you on today. I mean, you really have upgraded all of us, taught us all so much, and there's so much to read. I can't wait to read more of your books. I've enjoyed them so much. They're so thorough and insightful, thoughtful. They're just from so many different angles, things, unexpected facts about things, and great stories too, cheerful and but also dark. I mean, everything in between, all of it. And thank you for your great work you keep doing.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a treat to get to talk in such a wide-ranging fashion, and I appreciate the questions you ask.
So, did you have anything else that you want to share? Like anything you're working on?
Well, I'm working on a biography of David Lynch, which will be out in about 2 years' time. Another very complex man, complex in a different way, and a great Northwesterner. I was born in New York, but I've lived in Oregon since 1992. And
Wow.
I think of this as home. My children are sixth-generation Oregonians. Their
Oh my gosh.
great-grandmother's grandfather came here on the Oregon Trail. And so
My relatives came on Oregon Trail. I have to brag as well. I mean, proud. My relatives came across on the Oregon Trail, and I love that history. I love those roots. I'm very proud Oregonian over here. Proud Oregonian living in New York.
Here's something. I've 12 books, working on my 13th. Every single one of my books has two things in it. Dean Martin, who I've just taken to be a lucky charm, and Oregon. Every book has mentioned Oregon. And I've had to go out of my way a couple of times to make the connection. Lynch is going to be easy. Dean Martin was tough, but I found a Dean Martin connection to David Lynch. But I consider myself a Portlander, a proud Portlander, and I love it here. I don't think I could live in Hawaii, but I don't think I could live in any other part of the United States. And I've lived in New York, Philly, Los Angeles, visited other states a whole bunch. Oregon is my home.
Oregon, and this is not to be sad, but my Uncle Tom on his deathbed, it makes me sad. He said, you can take the girl out of Oregon, but you can never take Oregon out of the girl. And that's, I swear, it's so true. Like, I'm so proud to be from Oregon. It's such a special place. And look at me. Every time I think of him, he's special, but.
And I think my kids feel the same way. My daughter stayed in Oregon. She went to University of Oregon, and she lives in Portland. But my son.
That's where I went. University of Oregon. Woo! Go Ducks!
Go Ducks!
That's right.
But I have one son lives in Queens near you, and one lives in Honolulu. And when they get back here with their partners, one of them's now a dad, and bring their people, they're just like, I forget how great this is.
Yes.
And the idea that I live in a city, I can walk to City Hall. I live near Wilson, what used to be Wilson High School.
Oh yeah.
I can walk to City Hall, but if I get in my car, in 90 minutes, I'm at the ocean. In 60 minutes, I'm on a 12,000-foot mountain. In 45 minutes, I'm in wine country in a valley. And I'm not even a nature guy. And I know that how rare and beautiful a gift that is.
I love everything you just said about Oregon. And this is turning this into like an Oregon love fest right now, of course, because I mean, being native Oregonian myself and you being an honorary native Oregonian sounds like to me. Um, I have to say, I remember over the years, the marketing campaigns, they'd have different, mayors and things. And I remember one of the ones that really was a popular one years ago was Oregon, come visit, but just don't stay.
Yeah.
Because they didn't
No,
want to overpopulate it.
Yeah. It changed starting in about 2012, I would say. I've lived in this same neighborhood for 30 plus years. And I could have told you, if you told me the time of day, the day of the week, and the weather conditions, I could have told you within a minute how long it would take me to get somewhere and where I would park. And that started to change. There's neighborhood infill. There's money that didn't used to be here. I've written books about people who are connected to the automobile business. 3 of my books have involved automotive history. So I've got an eye for high-end cars in particular, because these were race car drivers, Paul Newman, and Ferrari is in my Italy book.
Well, if you want to real quickly, if you want to write on cars, you should interview Ice-T also. He and Coco, they're friends of mine. They have a car collection too.
Oh, wow. Well, it used to be if you saw like a Maserati or a Ferrari in Portland, you were either looking at a car dealer, Phil Knight, the owner of Nike, or a Trailblazer. And One day, about 10, 12 years ago, I'm driving around downtown looking for a parking space where there should be one, but there no longer is because there's apartment buildings where there used to just be single homes or, corner stores. Mm-hmm. And I'm following a Maserati. And I realized that this guy in front of me is also looking for a parking space. You just know, like the way they stop at the corner and you can see them look and then they make a right and I'm thinking, you son of a gun. I'm driving a 15-year-old Passat. You've got a $200,000 car. Put that thing in a garage. Leave the street parking to local fifths. And, I was like, oh, okay, Portland has changed. And, we're now on the downside. I think Portland does better when it's underrated and under the radar. So I'm looking forward to, people thinking, oh, it's a hellhole. Yeah. You keep thinking that. And I'm going to go out today and take a walk in an old growth forest inside the city limits. You keep thinking it's a hellhole and you stay in Reno or Phoenix.
I can't tell you how many people say to me, oh, Portland, oh, it's so awful. It's so nice. It's so funny. I just say, oh, I know you should probably never go there. You would not like it. You would not like it at all. And I mean, of course, I'm going to keep it to ourselves.
Saturday, this past Saturday was the Portland Book Festival, which is a big annual event, which sold out. Book festival sold out. That's
Powell's,
downtown,
everything, all that,
downtown in the park blocks, using the museum and the old churches and the Schnitz and the big concert hall and the theaters next to the Schnitz. So there are all these bookie people going around with piles of books in their arms. They've gotten signed by authors. Down the block, 1 block away, was the Fry Bread Fest, which was a Native American food and handicraft festival. Oh. And 3 blocks in the other direction on the same street was the Portland Saturday Market, the farmers market, which is one of the great culinary markets on earth. Yes. And it was a sunny autumn day. The leaves were every color. All you saw was families and people with books. And this is less than a mile from the war zone spot. And I was like, anyone who doesn't want to come here because there's a guy in a frog costume poking fun at a National Guardsman should stay away, because they sold out this book festival. That means there's too many book people here. How do we get some of these people to move away? So... it's just like, it's the Portland way. If you wanted to be famous, you went to LA. If you wanted to strike gold, you went to the Yukon. If you wanted to just make quality of life, you came to Oregon.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh, I love that. And I second that. I love that so much. And I always say, I'm so grateful to be from there. I'm so grateful that that's my home. And I'm so grateful that the holidays come and that's where I get to go. And everyone who knows me knows I go home as much as I can. I still have all my friends I grew up with and everything. And I have an enormous family. Listen, this has been such a magical conversation. I'd like to celebrate. I'd like to get a drink if you have anything nearby. There we go. And so I'd like for you to offer something you'd like to celebrate at the end of this episode.
Goodness. I had a birthday last month and a day of real joy. I have a partner whom I love. She and I have been together for 13 years. And on the day of my birthday, we just did nothing. We got a hotel room downtown. We shopped. We had our nails done. We went to a great restaurant with my daughter. And during that day, I was counting my blessings and my work and my personal life and my children. I have a granddaughter and a granddaughter on the way.
Congratulations!
Thank you. And today is a very strange anniversary.
Today?
As of yesterday, I am older than my dad lived to be. My dad died 19 days after his 64th birthday. Today is 20 days after my 64th birthday. So I take these two things together and I think I have a very fortunate and rich life. I do the work and I reap the rewards, and you got to be lucky as well. But I also think that my folks who are gone now for some time would see what happened in my life and would be so happy. So that's what I want to celebrate, my parents' happiness. This picture here, that's my dad opening a store in Brooklyn in like 1959. And that's a painting.
Beautiful.
And my daughter is named for her grandpas. Her name is Paula Jerome. She was named for her grandpa Paul and her grandpa Jerry. And she was about 10 when she learned that Jerome was not typically a girl's name. And she loves it. She loves it.
Yeah.
Paula Jerome is her identity.
That's so cool.
That's what I celebrate. That the life I've been fortunate to have, the work I've been fortunate to be allowed to do, and still being here to see it.
Beautiful. Well, here's to that. Here's to your beautiful life. All right. Cheers. Cheers. And yes, I love that. Okay, my friend. Well, until next time, until we can share more stories, more film, more books, all the beautiful things of the world. And I just want to thank you again for joining us and sharing so much. Audience out there, please go check out Shawn Levy's work, his wealth of books and podcasts, and more to come. And until next time, Shawn, have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe. Show your support. We really appreciate it. Bye.